Next up, we have a case study on China, evolution in the Chinese startup ecosystem and learnings for Southeast Asia. Please welcome Ms. Yanqing, Managing Director at YICAI Research Institute, who will moderate this session. 接下来是一场重量级演讲及圆桌讨论，给东南亚的中国经验借鉴，中国创业生态系统的演变。有请第一财经研究院院长杨燕青女士来主持这个环节。Over to you， 燕青。
各位朋友，大家好，欢迎大家来到 Singapore FinTech Festival (SFF). 那么，我们今天的这一场讨论的主题呢，非常的有意思。我们的主题呢是 A Case Study on China: Evolution of the Chinese Startup Ecosystem and Learning for SEA。那么我们会一起来讨论呢中国的初创的这样的一些企业和金融的生态和一个互动的关系。我们会分享非常多的关于中国的案例，那么也期待呢和 SEA 呢会有更多的比较讨论和借鉴。我们的今天的这个论坛呢，有非常重要的我们的3位嘉宾，那么也都是这个领域非常资深的投资者。我们的第一位呢是来自华美银行的郑诗伟先生，那么郑先生呢是华美银行的Managing Director。那么华美银行呢，在整个我们的初创企业的融资的领域呢，非常长的历史，而且有非常独特的模式。那么一会儿呢，郑先生会给我们做非常多的分享和讨论。那么我们第2位嘉宾呢，是来自 CCV Capital 的创世伙伴资本的创始人周伟先生。那么周伟先生呢，也是这个领域非常资深的投资人和研究者和观察者。那么我们最后一位我们的重要的嘉宾呢，是来自融360简谱科技的联合创始人兼 CEO 叶大清先生。那么大清先生呢，也是这个领域非常活跃的资深的投资人，那么也是非常深厚的观察家和非常睿智的评论者。那么今天呢，我们3位嘉宾跟我们一起来分享讨论我们这个领域的一些案例。那么后面呢，我们还会进一步的做更多的研讨。
Hi everybody. This is Calvin Cheng from East West Bank. It's a very honor to attend this SFF festival. I'm going to talk about capital ecosystem for Chinese startup. Actually, this is a very exciting topic. I moved over to Shanghai from Silicon Valley about 7 years ago. I've been observing the explosive growth of Chinese startup and venture capital development. If you look at Chinese startup ecosystem, pretty much you have venture capitalists and who provide valuable capital and advisory to their portfolio companies. And you have the portfolio company, which is a startup, and that range from TMT healthcare to consumer. And you do have a venture banks, and that include East West Bank. We provide more reasonable cost financing to the startup company and in tandem with the venture capitalist. For funds, we definitely talk about USD fund and renminbi funds. Those are the prevalent funds in the Greater China region. We do see the funding numbers has been creeping up in the last few years, but we did see the drop in the first half of this year due to the pandemic. However, the second half of 2020 actually has been improving quite dramatically, especially the dollar amount on so-called hot companies. And I do want to sort of identify the differences between startup ecosystem and in China versus the US. Basically, a lot of people say US is very technology centric and China is more starting from business model innovation. But we do see the changes along the way. Chinese company has been doing a lot of technological innovations as well, including the companies that our panel speakers is running. And I also want to point out the valuation and also the dollar amount investment, especially for earlier stage companies. In China, certainly there's no comparison. The dollar amount has been huge for early stage companies, along with the high valuation, the entrepreneurs and the funding teams they were able to achieve. I realized that the reasons are the growth rate of the economy is very different between these two countries. China basically has been having explosive growth in the last, I would say, 20 years. So that sort of point out to the high valuation and also high dollar amount the startup company in China got. In the US, we used to say the earlier stage company, if they raise $5 million USD and they pre-money valuation is 5 million, then you got 5 million, that's 10 million. But that probably is a joke for a lot of Chinese startup companies because they have gotten much more than that. So that's a really big difference between these two markets. And another special characteristic of Chinese startup ecosystem is the exit market. I mean, Chinese venture capitalists and also startup companies, they have been created and also go to offshore for their IPOs. And in the US, it's primarily in the US. But for China, we do have a lot of innovations. You have A-shares, you have 创业板, you have technology board, 科创板, and you can go to Hong Kong and you can go to US or even Europe. So it's much more diverse. And the final point I want to point out the differences is in the US, the exit market consists of a lot of mergers and acquisition transaction called MMAs. But in China, I mean, you still see more entrepreneurs, they are aspiring for going IPOs instead of being acquired. So that's a big difference as well. Well, this is a very sort of wordy slide, so I'll leave the audience to read them. But I want to point out, starting from 2012, 2013, that was the time I sort of came to Shanghai. And we did see the startup and venture capital boom starting in 2010s. And that's the time we also started working with good partners like CCV and acquire a company like Longshan Liuling. So it has been a good time. And 2020, that would be a new era for, I think, for a lot of sort of constituents in these ecosystems because of the pandemic, because of how this changed the whole work environment and all investments psychologies. Let me talk a little bit about the benefit of sort of venture debt financing. That's my main business, and that's how East West Bank help startup company and work with venture capitalists. And certainly, venture capital is the main capital driver for startup companies everywhere, even in the US, it's the same thing. But venture debt certainly can provide a very good supplemental capital resource to startup companies to extend their runway and also eventually increase their valuation as well. So those are clearly pointed out in these two graphs. What kind of companies would we like to see? I mean, we pretty much think about the company's quality like venture capitalists do. We look at the founding team, and that's probably one of the most important aspects of the startup companies. We certainly look into their business model, whether they have an addressable market, whether they have barriers of entry, and those are all very important to the venture debt provider like us. And for the industry, certainly we are industry agnostic. We look into a lot of growth areas, as you can see on the slides. We do provide financing to company in both offshore or onshore, if you look from the China point of view. And we work with different type of investors to finance their portfolio companies that include USD funds and the increase in the renminbi funds. We also look into companies' potential to see whether they can go to the next steps and eventually find a good exit market, because that would sort of play well into what we would like to see in the beginning and also what we would like to get the return from to adjust the risk. There are several types of venture loans that we work with startup companies. Working capital loans, sort of longer growth term loans, equipment financing, M&A financing, and because the nature of East West Bank, we also provide quite some cross-border banking transaction for companies' banking and financing needs. So let's talk a little bit about the pre and post COVID-19. I mean, this year certainly is very unique, and a lot of people call it crazy. And so if you look at the funding starting from 2018, we actually has been seeing a little bit decline from 18 to 19, but that was a little bit more related to the international geographical situation and also the macro economies in the world. But if you see the later part of this graph movement, we do see the tick up of the funding, especially in Asia. And I think that is very, very self-explanatory because I think Asian countries, especially China, has been emerging from the recovery of the post-COVID. This is just interesting read. So it's pretty much talk about the COVID-19 and the post-COVID-19, how we define strong startup and how we see the trend is going. Let me spend a little bit of time about how I understood the startup and VC market for the Southeast Asia, so-called ASEAN region. We do see similarity between SEA and China, primarily demographic, which means population, and also the overall economic growth. And everybody knows SEA market is a newcomers, but a lot of VCs and a lot of companies, including our panelists, they have been getting into the market. And we have also been seeing a lot of Southeast Asian companies that are looking for financing as well. And we were encouraged by the development of the Southeast Asian movement, and also because other than they have a little bit lower points of economic starting point, but they also present higher growth. If you look at their relatively younger generations and also their adoption of mobile devices, they pretty much skip the PC and even laptop stages. If you look at the capital invested by sectors, certainly I would say financial service and retail, that including e-commerce, has been the standout. So that's very fitting to our conference, which is a strong advocate for FinTech, for mobile, for e-commerce as well. It's all based on this internet theme to improve our daily life and business transactions. Well, I mean, certainly after so many years working in venture banking, venture capital investment banking in Silicon Valley, and also in the last almost 7.5 years in China, certainly would like to offer some sort of limited wisdom for our audience. I'm pretty sure it's a lot of people in Southeast Asia, they want to see how China do it and how we feel about what can be referenced and what can be learned. I think talent has always been a discussion point, no matter where you are in the world. I think that's also very important for the young market like Southeast Asia. they can have an open policy to accommodate more global international talents into helping them to form this important growth market. Since it's a very diverse market and with a lot of countries in Asia, and so logistics is always an issue. So I think it will be up to the entrepreneurs and also work with different governments and try to make the whole dispersed area as one. Late stage investment, we do see that is maybe a little bit lacking in Southeast Asia compared with US and China, but that is also a barometer for a lot of investors and even general public. They want to see which company becomes a unicorn and which company can go public within a short period of time. That creates excitement, and that excitement is very healthy if we use it right for the motivation of this whole ecosystem. So that part of the investments in terms of amount and finding the next unicorns is very important. Exit channels, as I mentioned earlier, US, Europe, Asia. I mean, we do have a variety of secondary market that growth company can tap into. Government support, we do find that sort of common in China to help entrepreneurs and also to inject capital by forming different kind of JVs or government-related fund to help strategic technology and directions. I think that can be sort of referenced by the SEA market as well. Venture debt financing, certainly that's the area of our expertise. We want to sort of point out what are the benefits for the entrepreneurs. Certainly, we provide additional capital on top of the equity raise. So it's the same value of the money, and so we think we can help them grow. And we also extend the startups' capital runway. So fundraising market has been up and down, and having a committed bank to help you on financing certainly can be one of the sort of anchor for the capital stabilities. And our capital tend to not take ownership of the company, so we create much less dilutions for the entrepreneurs. And then finally, we can be a very reliable banking partners for all the entrepreneurs who chose to bank with us. And I also want to speak a few words for sort of our partnership with VCs. We certainly want to work together with VCs because the equity and debt investments are always the discussion of the ultimate capital allocation, capital sort of resources for the companies. We can also play a good role monitoring the portfolio's companies' performance for our investment partners. And we also have a product for the VCP, no matter it's on the management company level or directly to their funds. I think that's it for me. Thank you very much.
So today I want to discuss with everybody about, based on my entrepreneur background and also the 14 years of venture capital investments experience, I want to discuss about the current trend we saw. What's the difference between now and 10 years ago, and also our prediction about next 5-10 years, what will happen in China and also the rest of the world for startup and ecosystem. So first of all, we think there's an interesting comparison because venture capital being basically the business model being invented and established in Silicon Valley in 1970s when Clint Perkins and Sequoia established early 70s. It's booming there, and we've been follow the paths. Our peers been working in Silicon Valley and US. to invest in great companies and trying to help to build the next generation innovative company. The first 10 years in China, 2000 to 2010, almost every startup in China trying to follow US approach and trying to copy a business model from US. It's called copy to China mode. At that time, we facing a lot of challenging with client because many people blame us, why you guys invest in company trying to copy our model. That's the first 10 years. But since 2010, we saw there's a lot of innovation started based on China consumer behavior business model being emerging from China. Those kind of business model you'll never see in rest of the world. It's very interesting. And we saw it's basically this model innovation period happens, especially on consumer and 2C side on mobile phone. The next 2010 to 2005, we saw that happens. And since 2010 to 2015. And since 2015, we saw technology innovation happens in China. Not only business model innovation. China started to have some technology innovation and especially on some new technology being applied to commercial market to establish solutions to solve the real problem. It happens. So it's pretty exciting. That's the time that why CCV and CCV team, we've been think about, we need to establish a new structure to better serve the innovation from China. A quick decision system, on-ground decision is kind of fun. So we, together with all the client products and TMT team in China, we established CCV. That's a starting point. There's two major difference we saw now that compared to building startup in US and China. There's two major difference we want to share with us, and then we can share what we think will be the difference between China and maybe Southeast Asia and the rest of the world. First of all, in China, building startup, we clearly understand that in US actually, entrepreneur waiting for the technology to be like 99% mature and ready. They're waiting for the technology and the product ready, mature to launch the product. But in China, clearly entrepreneur using a very different approach. When the technology and product like 65%, maybe 60% ready, they try to launch the product to the market. And they very fast learn from market, get the feedback, and renew the product and launch again. So we call it fail fast, learn fast, improve fast approach. In Chinese, we call it 快速迭代. It's a very different approach from beginning as a very classic Silicon Valley VC firm in China. We saw that happens and we disagree. We think you need to waiting for the product to be ready to mature. And you cannot launch that kind of like 60% ready product. But later, we saw something very interesting that Chinese entrepreneurs learn very fast. And they can make the product totally different within 3 months with multiple times of renewal of the product. And during this process, they also train the entrepreneur or train the user to adopt new ideas. And they also adopt the customers' feedback and adopting the product, make it very, very suitable for Chinese users' behaviors and habit. Eventually, we saw they get most of the market shares. And also many products they learn from US from beginning, and after 3 months, it looks totally different. Like Weibo, it's kind of like Twitter in China. From beginning, it looks like very similar. But now when you look at Weibo, it's totally different product compared to Twitter. And we think it's more complex and powerful here, more suitable for China environment. And also for AI, it's past 5 years, a very hot topic in China as well, in global market. And we saw it happens same. In US, people waiting for the product and the technology ready to launch product. But in China, entrepreneur combine the AI with human effort to launch the product to solve the immediate problem. For example, in AI education area, we know that AI is not ready to teach students yet by themselves. But many Chinese companies trying a new approach. For example, investment we made called Ding Dong Class. They use the AI combined with a real person. Every one-on-one English education class for small kids in China, they realize that every class, a typical response from teacher to students, like tons of different scenarios. So what they do, they videotape like hundreds of different typical scenarios from teacher response to kids with a short clip. And AI will responsible only to analyze students' response, students' pronunciation, students' focus level, etc., and then push the correct clip to students with a very, very dedicated workforce to do that. Eventually, the product looks like when kids using the product, it's kind of like they are really interaction with a real teacher. Kids cannot tell the difference at all. So we know that AI is not mature enough to be a teacher yet, but with this combined hybrid approach, Chinese entrepreneurs solve the problem. They're using AI to solve the immediate problem from now. And another product we saw, it's AI diagnosis product. They working with a hospital. In China, the hospital being very good hospital, don't have enough resource for patient. And in rural area, very well-established hardware with a hospital that's empty, nobody there, because people want to go to the famous hospital and the doctors. But the company we invested called Shukun Technology, they are using AI to solve the, at least for the any diagnosis image reading related. And after 3 years of the commercialization trying, they accumulate enough real patient data, train their AI. And now this year, during the coronavirus pandemic, their product being well recognized and well adopted. And the user number eventually proved that product is already, accuracy is already ready enough to be commercialization. So basically, this is these two being very good example how people using technology, even it's not mature enough, combined with other solution to solve the real problem immediately. That's a key difference we saw in China compared to Silicon Valley startup and entrepreneurs. And also another difference we saw that, for example, like enterprise investment in China compared to US. When talking about enterprise investments, people are talking about SaaS and cloud, like Salesforce. But I always ask people why Salesforce being so successful over 10 years. There's no Salesforce copycat in China is successful. Why? Eventually, people must realize that in China, small and medium enterprise, their behavior, their owners' behavior is different from US. In China, the entrepreneurs, the small and medium enterprise owners, they want to see the clear contribution from your service. Kind of like a consulting, kind of like a efficiency improvement kind of service in China is a little bit difficult to get them to pay you because it's not so clear how much you contribute to their business. So in China, we saw successful, especially these 2 years, pretty successful enterprise softwares, enterprise cloud SaaS service provider. What they do? They provide in-depth involvement service, not only SaaS and cloud, they involve in your business process daily. And sometimes without their service, you will lose certain revenue stream at all. For example, investment we done in here called Yunhu. We serve the over 1 million small clinics in China with SaaS and cloud. Small clinics in China, they don't have any ability to do any test. If they want to do any test, they have to lose the patient. Patients go to hospital. As there's no channel for small clinics to deliver their, if they took any sample, no hospital will test for them. There's no bridge there. And what Yunhu do, they provide SaaS and cloud, and then they provide kind of like a Meituan kind of a service. They have on-ground guys to pick up when clinic owner order a test, a certain kind of test, they will come here, pick up the sample. They sign contract with the hospital. They deliver the sample to the hospital, provide the result back from cloud. With this service, the clinic can keep the patient, keep the revenue, and can share the test revenue with the Yunhu. And the next step, because the cloud, from the cloud, Yunhu know everything about your inventory, like medicine and supply. They can do the automatic supply chain financing and supply chain fulfillment for clinics. This is a very different approach compared to US. In US, cloud company, SaaS company, don't involve in like an on-ground operation, and also don't involve in the complete daily operation, so they're so in deep. But in China, they do this. So it's a very different approach. Basically, with this understanding, I think that we realize in China, next 10 years, the startup ecosystem, company building, and entrepreneurs strategy will more and more different from what we saw happens in US. In China, I think next 10 years, people are focusing on solving the supply and demand imbalance problem. In past 20 years, we've been investing companies trying to solve the connection problem. People invest in companies to build connections between people, between business and business, etc. Now, the key issue is not connection at all. The key issue is there's many industry, supply and demand is imbalanced. With the internet and the connection supply, the fundamental bottleneck cannot be break. So with our understanding, next 10 years, we will leverage technology to solve the supply and demand imbalance, like the company, AI image reading company I mentioned. With their help, rural area, small hospital, less experienced doctor can provide as best as the best hospital and doctors accuracy for diagnosis from the best hospital. So patients don't need to go to Beijing and Shanghai's hospital. They stay in their hometown, have the same level of diagnosis accuracy with the technology help. And it's not only on AI image reading. We try to invest in digital healthcare to help them to in different approach, different verticals, make sure that they have the same level of healthcare service from even a rural town. Education the same. With our AI education company, they can enjoy the best education from online, equal to the students in the big city like Beijing and Shanghai. I think Daqing's company, Jumbo.ai, also do the same. They provide AI help, AI service on financial area to make sure people from different regions can enjoy the same level of service from financial technology as well. So this is something we saw and we think will be very important for next 10 years investments and building startups in China. And also we think this is something very interesting trend, also can give some innovative idea for people from other regions of the world, that every region have different developing level and different consumer behavior. And we can learn from other country, we can learn from other region, but eventually entrepreneurs should understand the local environment, the local situation to design your strategy to fit in and building a very good strategy to fit in this environment. Thank you.
我今天的这个话题呢，我想就是深入一些吧。我的主题是数字时代金融风险的一些最近的一些思考和一些启示吧。我们如果到第2页的话呢，其实简谱科技融360，我们的使命是希望是让金融更简单，成为每个人的金融伙伴。实际上，在过去的将近10年，我们一直帮中国和东南亚地区的一些金融机构提供数字化的转型，提供风控、数据和其他的一些科技的服务。如果到第3页的话呢，实际上像我们的这个平台呀，说我们是一个连接用户和连接那个金融机构和科技公司、数据公司的一个平台。当然，我们本身也是一个数据和一个人工智能公司。我们在过去将近的10年，我们已经连接了上千家的金融机构。当然，这个金融机构服务的用户，我们实际上在过去的几年呢，已经累计的服务了那个几亿的那个注册用户。好，我快速跳到我们到第5页啊。其实第5页我们说我们这个疫情这个10年一遇的那个经济周期，对吧？但是实际上从这个我们从好的方面先讲吧。其实疫情其实倒逼我们的金融机构的数字化转型，对吧？也倒逼了很多用户他的无论是从商品、金融完全在线上化。当然还碰到了那个监管周期啊，其实今年也算是监管的一个巨大的监管周期，对吧？前一项蚂蚁金服的上市的延迟，其实也是反映了整个全球中国的监管政策也发生了一些变化。所以当在这个大背景下，我们如何能看待风险，对吧？无论是这个信用风险，无论是流动性或者说市场风险，当然其他的一些数据隐私安全呀，包括一些道德风险、这些监管风险，当这么多风险全部聚集，我们应该会怎么去应对？所以这个我觉得是一个值得我们整个行业、全球的那个无论是投资人、行业从业者、我们的消费者，我们一起来探讨的一个巨大的一个话题吧。其实我们说那个，我们到第6页哈，我看看。第6页呢，其实我们说预测未来，我们不如创造未来，对吧？那预测风险，当然不是创造风险，而是把风险能够去提前去做判断，去把风险尽可能扼杀在摇篮里，或者尽可能去缩小。其实这个预测风险呀，很多时候我们很多从业人员也肯定也建模型，对吧？那肯定是用数据，也肯定时候也，你说我们能不能预测股票市场，能不能预测那个选举？其实这边呢有一个蛮有意思的一个案例吧，这是也是一家大数据公司曾经在那个10月份的时候也想去预测这个美国的选举的这个结果。当然，这个最后他们预测是川普会赢啊，以280多票会赢，然后是民主党的候选人拜登会输。当然我们也看了这个预测的模型啊，其实里面有很多数据。当然有一些数据是说，川普其实他的支持者在谷歌和 Twitter 的那个搜索的那个量持续上涨，对吧？那个川普有很多那个支持者，今年那个选民也增加了很多。当然我们说以前中国有个有名的叫义乌指数，哪个候选人在义乌订购的商品更多，那个可能那其实每次预测都是算是那个准确的啊，那个就会能够赢得选举。我看还有一些数据啊，其实我们看到其实就是有一些是摇摆州，摇摆州其实很多时候也决定了这个选举的方向。当然这家企业呀，其实也用了非常好的算法和人工智能的模型，但最后我们知道结果其实是往往跟这个模型预测的恰好是相反的啊。我这边呢其实也分享一下，这是我在10月3号那个选举结果出来以前，我也斗胆做了一下我的判断。当时我的判断是有几点呢，觉得是宾夕法尼亚州的郊区的大妈大姐，这些摇摆州的这些人能够决定那个选举的未来，对吧？最后我的判断当时是说，获胜的队是蓝队，那就是民主党。当时我也斗胆预测了结果，蓝队将以280到288票那个选举人团那个获得胜利啊。当然这个结果到底准不准确还不知道，我们还要等到 12月4号或者1月6号才知道。当然，我最后的结论是说，中国举红旗，美国主蓝旗，世界才更和谐啊。其实这个选举啊，其实我们后面也，这是我的模型啊，我们公司的模型，我们的判断啊。其实我们当时有一个很重要的一点，我们在做这个模型、做这个判断的时候，其实就想，选举是一个营销的问题，还是一个风控的问题？其实以前所有的选举都是个营销的问题，谁 popular， 谁的那个人气旺，谁就能赢，对吧？那今年的选举其实跟以前都不一样，今年是一个不选那个川普，今年的选举其实是个风控的问题。我是因为讨厌那个川普，我才去选民主党的拜登的。所以其实如果说我们要解决一个风险，对吧？到底，所以这就是第一个话题，我要想想，我们解决一个问题，到底是个营销的问题还是风控的问题？所以这是一个典型的案例。我们不是预测营销，而是预测风险。当然，今年碰到这个疫情啊，我们看看右边那张图啊，那个第7页，现在是第7页，我们的预测啊，其实我们看到，其实选举那个集会啊，今年川普其实他也有7000万的选票，他的选举集会每一场都是人头攒动，对吧？几千人，甚至有上万人的。当然，拜登的那个演讲的集会其实是没几个人，是吧？如果用这个数据去预测这个选举结果，那当然我们做模型的时候，这是 garbage in garbage out， 这是垃圾进垃圾出，对吧？所以我就反思这个我们有另外一个大数据公司的预测和融资案例的预测啊，就是说，首先数据重要，还是人重要，还是算法重要，还是你的目标重要？那看起来其实目标也很重要，对吧？目标每一条都重要，对吧？如果你的模型的目标都错了，你有再好的数据，你有更好的算法，你的人再聪明，可能结果与你的也跟现实有差距。所以这个其实关于用选举做一个案例啊，关于我们现在这个风控啊，我就想，这是我的第一个观点吧，就是说人和数据和目标到底如何来去做判断。我们到第8页啊，实际上这就是我们整个数字化转型时代那个风控的这一些挑战吧。当我们面临新的数据治理的挑战，对吧？新的监管风险，对吧？当我们的那个灰犀牛和那个黑天鹅一起来碰撞，对吧？当然，技术不断在拉动我们的用户到互联网上数字化，对吧？这个风险的整个我们叫这个 paradigm 这个范式都发生了根本的变化，对吧？好，我们到第9页啊，其实这个流程图啊，我想风控行业的专家或者说从业人员甚至投资业都非常清楚，对吧？我们从这个用户的角度，从用户到金融机构，这个无非是从这个数字化的营销，提供这个反欺诈，做这个 KYC， 对吧？进行那个信用风险的评估，然后通过运营的方法来留存用户，然后后面再去催收啊，包括这整个闭环，实际上这个模式其实上百年都没有变化。但是我们看我们到第10页哈，第10页我中间有一张图出来了。我们行业有一个比喻啊，当然这个比喻也算是我的一个感触，一个思考吧。其实做风控的行业的人员，其实我说的简单一点吧，用中文讲，我就觉得中文讲的那个好处就出来了。风控人员啊，就是一个蜂箱里面的老鼠，两头受气。当然说的好听一点的，风控人员就是一个米老鼠，两头受气。尤其在数字风险时代是两头受气，为什么？那前端对吧，流量，对吧？数字化营销时代流量是在变的。前一段我们知道中国的一个常州公寓发生了一些问题，结果它后面的银行也得紧急处理它的信用风险、它的模型、它的那个客户的服务，对吧？所以说你的流量端变了，这个我们说是场景。所以我倒觉得中国的行业啊、监管啊，我们实际上整个行业过度的看重了场景。场景其实某种程度上可以说是个伪命题。其实我关于这个场景和风险的关系啊，我其实多年以前也就提到，场景其实会出现大问题。火烧连营，咱们《三国演义》里面的有名的故事，当你的场景和你的风险结合，有可能出现系统性的风险，对吧？所以这一点，这就是典型案例。场景出了问题，你的流量出了问题，你风控做得再好，也是系统性的风险。当然，这个风箱的另一端呢是催收和一些合规和一些监管，对吧？我们实际上看到，其实催收啊，如何智能化的催收， 如何去把这些那个逃废债、坏账的人群，让他更好的去能够提高他的偿还能力和偿还意愿，对吧？我们看到最近其实我们的监管部门也出现了一些逃废债的一些监管的一些策略，所以这一点就是我们数字时代风控的专业人员如何做一只更加聪明的，无论是小白鼠还是一个米老鼠啊。当然到第10页，我们再 click 下呀，我们实际上看到第10页，我们看到啊那个我们看到很多风控人员啊，其实就是那个米老鼠啊。当米老鼠把它的帽子拿开的时候，发现是秃头的。第12页呢，其实我们觉得在这个时代呀，数字时代呀，传统的风控模式其实出现了问题，对吧？我们传统的风控的整个，我们叫风控的整个体系吧，无论是从监管风险、信用风险、流动性风险、数据风险，对吧？这个其实如何去融入这个营销端，对吧？如何去把那个后端的运营和这个催收包括合规能够整合在一起？所以这个其实如何去更加的借助那个人工智能和大数据提高效率，降低这个成本，然后更好的去合规，其实这是这个行业要重新思考的一个大的方向吧。到那个13页，所以这个数字运营体系我们其实提到，就是说如何在一个强大的那个数据的中台，这个数据中台是整合了营销、风控、运营、合规，包括那个身份识别，包括后端的这个催收如何去更好的去结合在一起。所以这边呢，第13页呢也是我们的一些解决方案，对吧？底层其实数据库这个已经有几十年历史了，当然如何建立一个更强的中台，然后更好的去把这些风控的决策、运营的决策和营销的决策和催收的决策能够最好的整合在一起。对，当然这边14页呢，我们其实也打造了我们的风控大佬，如何能够综合的把那个无论是数据的特征管理人工智能的这个模块大数据的模块包括这个渠道管理，包括刚才提到的场景，真的是那么好吗？没有场景，当然那个可能是没有优势但是有场景，如果只有场景是万万不能。所以这一点呢，其实我们从很多合规的管理包括尤其是自动化，很多时候我们这个数字时代很多决策要实时，或者说要现场，或者要自动化，对吧？所以实际上很多时候你的模型、你的决策引擎、你的那个合规的要求，对吧？你的那个 KYC 的这些要求都如何去更好的去决策？当然更重要的是营销决策和风控决策和运营决策很多时候就是要一体化。所以这个实际上数字时代风控和其他行业的边界也已经被打破这个也是我今天的一个观点。当然那个我们说蚂蚁金服、蚂蚁科技那个重组的时代吧，我说我们叫蚂蚁金服重组时代吧。实际上我们觉得就是开放、创新和连接其实显得更加重要，对吧？实际上无论从监管的角度、从行业的角度、从用户的角度、生态的角度，我们不希望只有一个大的蚂蚁科技，我们希望是千千万万的蚂蚁科技。当然不是千千万万，这是个形容词N 个蚂蚁其实可能是比一个强大的蚂蚁对这个行业、对这个社会、对于我们的老百姓，其实长期是更健康的。当然，这个开放、创新和连接和合作，那连接最后还是通过数据来连接，通过人工智能来连接，通过技术来连接。这个后面我们说银行4.0，对吧？我们通过那个 API 来连接，这实际上无论是数据的交换、决策的分享，包括这个可能是一个金融机构体系内的这个开放，但我觉得更多的是金融科技企业和那个科技公司和金融机构，跟各种类型的金融机构，甚至是跟监管机构、投资机构，我们更好的在安全、有效的前提下去开放合作。好，我们到第16页这边呢，我们就是有一个 API 管理平台的一个案例吧。实际上，这个全球这个开放连接这个很多时候是无论是从这个 API 的那个准入 API 如何去准入，如何去注重这个安全，这个有信息的共享，有交易的共享，也有决策的共享，也有一些黑名单包括一些其他的一些整个 API 的那个生命周期管理，这边其实有挺多的非常好的工具和决策的模式吧。 啊。我们到那个第17页哈，17页其实刚才那个我们也提到这个 RCEP 这个区域的那个经济的那个合作啊，我们实际上看到这个15个国家和地区啊，15个国家地区，整个亚太地区，无论是中国、韩国、日本，我们这个北亚，包括东南亚呀，包括那个澳大利亚和新西兰啊。当然，我们看到的确这个地理的中心的确是在新加坡和印尼，对吧？我们这个地理中心，但是我们觉得这个经济的合作，区域的经济合作是第一步。但是我这边这个名词啊 ，RCEP 啊，这个就是金融的合作，区域的金融合作，毫无疑问，我们觉得是 RCEP 的2.0吧。这个毫无疑问，我们觉得区域的金融科技的合作啊、创新啊、监管的那个交流和沟通啊，其实前几周我们还和那个印度尼西亚的金融监管部门也做了这无论在数据隐私安全、在监管、在合规、在创新方面的一些沟通，我们也期望能够跟那个首先我们能够跟新加坡的金融监管部门，我们跟亚太地区或者跟 RCEP 机构一起。能够推动全球的这个金融科技的创新发展和合规，能够真正的让金融科技能够造福全球亿万的小微企业和消费者好吧，我的分享呢就基本上到这里。我那个最后一页呢，就是我的总结页哈这边其实我刚才提到几个观点这个也是一些我们作为行业从业人员对于中国最近这个发展的金融科技发展的一些反思吧。其实第一点呢，其实我们觉得敬畏还是最重要的。再好的模型，再好的数据，再好的算法、人工智能，对吧？再好的也还是最后是这个行业的这个敬畏很重要。因为的确，中国可以说中国零售金融行业吧，其实真正经历过一个经济周期或者2个的还是非常少的。美国其实每8年、7年、8年、10年经历一个周期，对吧？我觉得这一点就是说我们一定要有敬畏，可能100年一遇的。这个风险，对吧？也许在10年或者20年以后，所以我觉得敬畏还是蛮重要的。第二呢，风控行业的米老鼠或者说风向里面的老鼠效应啊，如何去打破这个领域的边界，打破这个学科的边界，如何能够跨越这个周期和时空啊？这个也是我们整个风控领域一个新常态的一个新话题吧。刚才我也提到了蚂蚁转型时代，整个行业将更加开放合作共赢，对吧？当然，这个开放合作，我觉得是首先我们推动区域性的，但更多也是全球性的，对吧？我们也希望 RCEP 对吧？或者 RCFP 也能够欧洲的监管部门跟美国的监管部门一起来探讨合作，对吧？当然，这个我觉得最后其实人性还是蛮重要的，无论是做投资，做零售金融风险，对吧？服务我们的小微企业，服务消费者其实人性和敬畏其实。在这里面其实也是几个非常重要的关键字最后一点呢，当然我们也是希望最后也感谢新加坡金融监管局感谢我们的合作伙伴我们一起去开放合作吧，一起共赢吧。因为金融科技过去10年我们也知道经历了那个高速的发展，当然最近也碰到了一些阻力但是下一个10年或者20年，我们觉得金融科技将会更精彩吧。这个里面技术的驱动。用户的需求，对吧？数字化的转型、监管的创新，包括整个风投，包括我们像周总这样，我们的风投包括我们的一起来投入吧。这个下一个10年、20年更精彩，好吧？我的分享到这里，谢谢大家。
We still have some time for discussion, and I hope it will be a little bit debate. We have touched upon some a very good case study in China and also in the United States and also in the SEA region. I would like to touch upon the case study of this micro examples into broader macro landscape. If we look at the global value chain and global technology chain landscape, we will see the very good collaboration and division of labor between China and the United States. United States focusing on the chips, softwares, and the platforms, all these fundamental things, and then China and China's startups and other companies and focusing on the application. It's a very perfect interaction and collaboration between China and the United States. How do you guys look at the future of the landscape of the technology ecosystem in globally, especially in China and United States? How will this kind of decoupling or reconnecting play out down the road, given the situation between China, United States, and global new coming in informations? So I would like to hear your insights here.
I think US is going to still be the center of technological innovation, but China, certainly their technology is catching up, and with a huge market, they're going to develop their own model. Eventually, I do see Southeast Asia is a good lubricant for example, for these two big countries, because both countries have large trade flows with SEA, with Asians, and also the supply chain has been been changing a little bit, or actually in a large degree, from very China-centric to Southeast Asia. India also gets some lucrative shares of the business. So I think both US and China, they can look into the markets on the global sense, including Southeast Asia, and as a pathway to bring more countries together instead of just focusing on US and China. And so if you have the multilateral relationship throughout the world, especially focused on high growth area, that's the area that we are focusing on today, I think that would certainly smooth out the tension, and that would create more angles, and that would create more interest for both countries. So I think that certainly, hopefully, will solve whatever the tensions right now.
Yeah, multilateralism is always a solution. But if we look at the new audit law, will it lead to a kind of a different ecosystem based on the different financial funds and the different technology platforms, and also even the different standards? How big is the risk is there?
I think the recent the audit law that was passed by the Congress in the US, I think that's nothing new, right? That topic has been been talking about for a while. But that law, according to my understanding, is applying for all foreign companies that are seeking or is being listed on US market. So it's a universal standard, and I'm pretty sure different countries, they are catching up on their audit standard, and they will also look into as a market that the law being set over there. So it's sort of a respect, and also it's a global alliances. If you want to be going to public in some markets, and then there are some basic rules you want to follow, and that apply to both ways. So I do think that is a good thing for companies that can achieve higher goals and to become more globalized. So I don't see the micro aspect that will be a risk for companies that are seeking being listed. That would only improve the quality of how the company run, and especially how the company run on their financial sense.
First of all, echo to Kevin's point. After all these details about all the regulations, etc., we need to understand fundamentally now the financial world lack of good asset. Money flowing, looking for good asset, right? But people cannot imagine a financial world today without great asset from China. In past 10 years, the innovative company, the mobile internet company went to IPO, the top 10, top 20 companies, that's 40% globally from China, right? So basically China and the US can kind of like half-half for this kind of a great company emerging. And China GDP now is global number 2, right? Growth rate is still very reasonably high. And most important thing is today, we really have innovation happens here. It's not follow anymore. There's a lot of innovation happens here. And not only happen here, our innovation being copied to Southeast Asia, India, and even US. Zuckerberg's email to his executive already shows that they try to learn from WeChat and some Chinese company for some new initiatives, right? So basically, this is the fundamental. With this understanding of the fundamental, we will understand that decoupling, I don't think it's possible. But in reality, with the current situation, some territory in parts people never, as a venture capitalist, I will only think about this part, that some territory in parts people never think about the building startup in China. For example, like a mobile operation system. In parts, iOS is so powerful. Android being free, open source for everybody, right? People can use it free. So nobody will think about, oh, building startup based on a new mobile operation system. And no investor in China trying to invest in such operation system. But with the current environment, it's possible. It's possible that China have a new operation system emerging for mobile internet. And China is a huge country, has 1.4 billion people. It's not a small country. So basically, the standalone market can support operation system by themselves. And who build this startup for the operation system definitely will be worth like billions of US dollars for sure. So this will be a great asset to invest. And again, money is flowing. I don't think this asset will be investing only by Chinese investors. Global market, global money will be definitely looking for this kind of asset. There's many other examples like this. Go ahead.
In the last 1 or 2 decades, we definitely have seen technology have really have a lot of innovation transformation to provide product and service to consumers, right? That's the 2C components, right? So that's part of the big internet innovation, from e-commerce to FinTech, etc., right? But starting from a few years ago, we definitely see we need to build the connection between the C part, consumer or user part, with the business enterprise part. So for example, we as a platform, we position to enable financial institutions, so the businesses, to provide the product and services to the consumers. The same happen in other sectors, in like you just mentioned, the manufacturing sector, right? In a lot of the automation, right, etc. So I would say to B or to C. I mean, of course, we started with the consumer part first. That's kind of the 2 wheels in a bicycle, right? I started first, but we need to have a bicycle. We need to have 2 wheels. The back, the wheel in the rear, in the back, actually are the 2B part. But we need the technology, we need AI, we need people understand both the 2C market and 2B market to make the bicycle run faster, right? You have left leg, right leg, you have to pedal fast, but we all ride bicycle for a long time, right? We know at the end of the day, a safer bicycle, a faster bicycle, actually your rear wheel is actually more important. It controls the speed and it controls the risk. So that's why we would say, really we have to look at it from the ecosystem standpoint. The businesses, the manufacturer, the providers, the services, right? At the end of the day, they have to create the product service that meets the consumer's needs. You have to push the product service to the right consumer, right? You have to have the touch point. You have to keep innovating. So I guess in the future, there's no such a thing as a 2B or 2C, right? You have to do both. Like this is what Long 360 or GMP technology we have been doing in the last 9-10 years. The first few years, we are more to see, right? We build a brand, we want to build a brand, we want to connect consumers, we want to start with the consumer first. But now in the last 4 or 5 years, like our Zhang, our AI and big data platform, we are helping our banks to manage the risk model better, processing the data better, build the middle office and back office. And also recently we have been doing some project like how to helping them to reach out to the consumer better, the digital marketing, how to make short videos in TikTok or in Kuaishou, that helping banks to educate consumers better in terms of financial awareness and the financial to defend the financial fraud. So I guess you definitely throw out a big question. That's a $1 trillion question for investors that impact billions of people. But my view would be, if 10 years later we talk about the same question, it would be to B or to C. That's two wheels in the bicycle. We are the driver.
Yeah.
Right. You are forward leaning or backward leaning.
Both are important, right? So back to Zhou Zong, you touch upon the gap between the demand and the supply down the road. And also, do you see this to B, to C also relevant here?
Actually, this new wave of investment on 2B sector is because one of the reasons because people realize that now technology is ready to solve the real supply chain problem. In parts, technology is not ready yet. Right now, it's ready. Of course, at Chinese standard ready, we can solve some problems. So people think this is a time for investment on 2B side. And also, another thing we need to realize that, especially during the COVID time, many last generation, old school entrepreneur in traditional industry, they realize, they rethink the meaning of life. Many of them, I thought in past several months, starting to passing their corporate operation to their next generation. So the next generation now really started to take over the operation of the traditional industry, and their next generation, they have a in-depth understanding of the digitalization. They know the power of digitalization and how to leverage technology. So I think this is another major reason why it's not just like investor want to do this. Entrepreneur now really want to do it to improve their industry, to improve their efficiency, to make sure they will can continue survive for next many years. So many reasons combined together, we think the 2B sector will have a lot of change in past 5 years, in next 5 years. Yes.
Let's talk a little bit on the digital currency and also the financial infrastructure of the future, in which blockchain play a role there, and also RTGS also coexist. So I'm wondering if Calvin and Daqing would like to talk a little bit on the financial infrastructure and digital currency for the future. Calvin, please.
No, before I talk about these digital currencies, and let me go back to the 2B issue just a little bit. I think 2B market, it's a huge market. I mean, if you look at US, there was just a huge acquisition that Salesforce.com acquired Slack, which is an office communication software and collaboration tool for $28 billion USD. So that's a very huge asset for the company, although the company went public already. If you look at the Chinese 2B market, you just look at Jingdong, you just look at Cainiao, look at all these companies that focus on servicing small to mid-sized business. I mean, they has been building the backbone for facilitating the flow for the 2B business. So that's market is certainly there. And I'm also thinking about the ASEAN market, especially such a market that has different countries, and you're talking about different borders. We talk about logistics and all that. Certainly the opportunity for serving multinational companies in the ASEAN market is also going to be there. So I'm optimistic about the market. Regarding the digital currency, as a banker, I sort of more looking toward how to improve the cross-border bank like East-West banks to better prepare for the future, like fund transfer, securitization, and other sort of fund-related that can go globally. So blockchain, I think it does have a good future. I think some banks, they have been implementing some projects regarding the blockchain, how the blockchain technology can help the transaction more secured more in the real time and more accessible for different players in the transaction to be properly identified and acknowledged. So I think that is going to be there to stay. For digital currency, certainly that's I will sort of defer it to Daqing, to David, for his entrepreneurial view.
Yeah, let's discuss this issue. It's a very important issue from three perspectives. First, from the user side, consumer side. Second, of course, technology, right? The third piece is very important from the regulation, from privacy, from security, from that perspective. Okay, the first part from the consumer, from the user standpoint, right? In this digital age, I would definitely think there is a necessity, there is a strong need in terms of digital currency from a regional perspective at least. So I remember I was traveling in Southeast Asian country a couple of times. I was very frustrated. Like in India, I have to pay 1,000 rupee for a taxi. Then I have a lot of rupees, right? But I went to Indonesia, oh gee, a meal cost me 1,000,000 rupiah, right? So I was checking my wallets. I have like at least 5 or 6 currencies. It's just crazy, right? I would definitely think in this, I would definitely think in 10 years, maybe 15 years, at least in the RCEP area, at least in Southeast Asia or Asia Pacific area, we will have a regional digital currency that consumers, businesses, small businesses will be happy to use. Right? That's why I think the need is already there.
Sorry, David. By the way, is this digital RMB or digital Asian ultra sovereign currency?
Okay, let me finish the 3 points and I will answer your question. Sure. Okay, the second piece, of course, all the technology solution, the providers are there, right? The DCEP, the digital currency by the People's Bank of China, right? I mean, it's already there. We can roll out any time, if not maybe later. But I think all the technology is there, right? So number one, we solve the user demand problem. Number two, technology there. The third piece, of course, the critical piece, right? I mean, the regulation for each country, right? We need to get Singapore Financial Authority on board, like Indonesia and other countries, right? I mean, that's a lot of work to do. So to answer your question directly, is that going to be renminbi denominated or a regional currency denominated? I would definitely think that doesn't matter. It's less important. But what I want to say, I mean, in this new currency, regardless, it's going to be a renminbi denominated or a regional currency denominated. Number one is digital, right? Number two is the technology powered, it's safe, secure, and it can be used for global cross-border trades, for people's travel, for daily life, or maybe empowered for oil transaction. Number two. Number three, I don't think it's going to be change the status quo of US dollar. However, I think, this is very important. It's going to have a regional impact. It's going to be there. So I guess it's a trade-off, right? Number one, don't want to change the status quo of US dollar, but they're going to enter people or business life in the region. So to summarize, I mentioned earlier, RCEP is 1.0, right? RCFP, the Regional Cooperation of Financial Partnership, that's number 2. But RDC, Regional Digital Currency, that's going to be the outcome. That's going to be the innovation of the RCFP. That may take 10 years, maybe 15 years. But I definitely think we will see that. We'll use that in 10, 15 years. So that's just my personal take. Yeah.
Very interesting. Very quickly, if RMB denominated or the Asian currency denominated is not important, but does stable coin or central bank digital currency, these two types of the designation important here?
Of course, I'm thinking more from the consumer or technology or business standpoint. That's why I think it's less important. It could be a portfolio of currencies, right? With Chinese renminbi, Japanese yen, or Singapore dollar, or etc. That could be a base for the digital currency, or could be have some like a digital other like a Bitcoin, or Bitcoin could be part of that portfolio as well. I guess we have to start from somewhere. So that's why I envision that it's a portfolio or combination of a sovereign currency with Bitcoin, maybe, right? Yeah. But again, of course, I think one thing is pretty sure that the importance of renminbi is going to be strengthened over time. So the later the launch of the regional digital currency, the contribution or the importance of the renminbi will be stronger. That's I'm pretty sure. Yeah. This part I'm pretty sure. I guess another question would be: will US dollar want to be joining this RDC? That's a big question. I don't know. Maybe not. Or maybe don't know. That's the question. The regulators, the global regulators, they need to be going to figure it out, right? Maybe
they need Singapore to CPTPP first before.
Yes. US need to join the RCEP first, then join this regional digital currency framework. So,
right.
That's a big question. Yeah.
I would like to ask all panelists the final question about the maybe more collaboration with the SEA and maybe digital RCEP. So what is your biggest hope, and also the $1 million suggestions for China's government and also to the SEA or maybe to Singapore government if we want to achieve a digital RCEP and also a more mutualized and maybe more integrated of the RCEP in Asian area in terms of the technology, in terms of the data, in terms of the ecosystem of the innovation and the financial markets. So what is your biggest hope and what is your biggest suggestions for the future? Maybe if you look at the year 2030 or even 2035 for this region.
So if you envision 2030 or 2035, that's a really long time. The world changed so fast, right? The Chang'e just landed in moon, get the test sample of the soil and coming back, right? Elon Musk is trying to send people to the Mars. So that's why, hey, after this year of pandemic, we get used to digital. We get used to just distance, doing a lot of things, right? That's why I would definitely think the whole financial sector need to catch up, going digital, going AI, going global. So just think about it. We need to build the whole ecosystem, the FinTech or financial service paradigm into the Mars, into the moon, right? If you can do that in the Mars, in the moons, that's the way to go. So that's why personally, I would definitely hope the digital currency, the RC, the Chinese DCEP or a regional digital currency would be test launched locally or regionally faster than the market is ready. I think we need to, so innovation need to be ahead of the curve compared to all the mindset. I guess the biggest constraint really is people's mindset, the paradigm, right? Just think about it. The thing need to be done in the Mars, need to be done cross-border, right? Globally, right? Either the central bank drive-driven or the VC-driven or the regional partnership. We just need to make it happen. So I definitely think it will happen before 2035, maybe 2030. Yeah, that's just my hope. Yeah.
Thank you.
Certainly, David is a very optimistic person, and that's without that, he cannot be a good founder of such a great company, right? So I just want to add some points is, I mean, especially on the financial technology, FinTech, I think it's an area that a lot of people try to innovate, but also failed. So I think the important thing is, since finance is such a big pillar of most of the companies' sort of economic foundation. So how to properly communicate with the regulator, with the central government, central banks, and not to abruptly interrupt their current sort of currency or trading mechanism, I think that would be hugely important. So how to enable the startups' aspiration on no matter digital currency, digital payment, blockchain, onto applying or secure more or sort of develop into helping the current financial system, I think that certainly would garner the sort of more near-term success for those startup companies that has the FinTech expertise. East West Bank, certainly we are, although we are not that famous in the digital payment or FinTech area, but we are doing the cross-banking solutions and products between US and the Greater China, plus some selected ASEAN markets. So we feel strongly that we certainly can offer sort of innovative products that can connect people and also companies in these regions via our commercial and venture banking offers. So we would like to be part of this innovative FinTech ecosystems and by playing a different part of the roles. Let's put it that way.
Thank you. Zhou Zong.
For me, I think it's just a one point that trying to open-minded for everybody, because now the world, the decoupling everything kind of like the world was flat. Now it's isolated. We don't want it to be isolated. We want to be more flat. So at least in this region, I think people should make things more smooth to benefit each other, right?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that we have a very good presentation this morning, and also a very good debate and discussion upon the technology and also the innovation, also ecosystem and everything here. So I'm looking forward to a very good future down the road in next 10 or 15 years. Thank you very much.
非常感谢大清、Calvin、杨院长和周总的精彩演讲和讨论。Thank you, Yanqing, Calvin, David, and Wei, for a wonderful session.